Hello, everybody. Nice to have you here, and welcome to the seventh session. Wow, seventh session already of the Happy Event Planner. Super excited. My name's Oliver. Who's been here already knows me. I'm head of marketing at Sweep and the community manager for the Happy Event Planner. So great to have you. It's super exciting. The year is nearly done. We're halfway through Q4. And I think today's topic is especially relevant right now. I'm going to have another guest on the show who I'm going to introduce in a second, or I hope he'll introduce himself. Before we start, just two little pieces of information. Number one, in case you share anything about this event later on, which would be great, or just screenshots or whatever you want to share with the world, feel free to use the Happy Event Profs hashtag on all your social medias. Would be highly appreciated. Otherwise, if you're not in our global Event Prof Slack community yet, under this live stream you can see a banner, and if you click on that after the show, you can join our global and constantly growing Slack community for event professionals. Okay, enough introduction from my side. I'm going to get our guest speaker on the show. Let's see if he's here. Merijn, hello.
Hello, welcome everyone. It's such a
Howdy.
pleasure to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you. How's it going?
Doing pretty good. Had to do some recovery from Event Tech Live, but all up and running right away. So yeah, looking forward to having this session and adding a lot of value to the people watching.
Fantastic. We'll get onto the Event Tech Live topic in a second. But first of all, could you maybe introduce yourself, what you do, and who you are?
Yeah, of course. My name is Merijn van Buuren. I'm the founder and CEO of Event Mender. We match event professionals with virtual event platforms, making your life a whole lot easier from both sides. Actually, if you're an event professional, we save you a lot of time doing the research for you and also ensuring you that you have the best match before you actually go on a demo, making sure that you don't have the endless demos that you have to go through right now, and only focus on the ones that actually fit in your event goals requirements. Um, and also for the platforms, we make it a lot more efficient. And that's what we're here to do, helping the event industry.
Awesome. I think one thing you said just now is a very, very important topic that we're going to speak about today, making lives easier. And this is kind of something that Event Tech is about. But before we get into that, we met just a week ago, actually, in London at Event Tech Live, which is a trade fair that is dedicated, well, to Event Tech, which already I find fascinating that there is such a large community, global community that meets up in the Excel, in this case, in London, and really talks and lives and breathes Event Tech. How was the trade fair for you?
It was, yeah, I keep saying it. It has been the best event I've been, at least for the whole year, probably since COVID, maybe even longer. It was such a pleasure to really reconnect with the industry. A lot of my event prof friends, if you're here, please give a shout out in the chat. It was so good to finally meet them in person, but also just to have one collective of all the important event technology, both on the inside side or then actually on the company side, where you could really have an easy chat. You know, everything was centralized in one place, which is obviously the goal of an event.
Yeah.
But I really love the fact that it's really niche into event tech only. And obviously for us, it's great to be there and connect with partners and other people in the industry, but
Mhm.
also to gather a lot of knowledge in terms of what are other companies seeing, what are other event professionals seeing in regards to event technology.
Mhm.
If you weren't there this year, I highly recommend you to come visit us next year. I'll definitely gonna be there.
Yeah, I see exactly the same. For me, it was super special as well, just to see this community of techies, people that really are into this whole topic of tech coming together under the idea of making events better and more efficient and stronger and more global. So, really, really cool event. And for me, the biggest takeaway was to see that if an event is focused, so a niche, it's just so much more effective. I went to a few other trade fairs that were events related, but I kind of had the feeling the event tech was pushed a little bit in the corner and wasn't very present, and then it doesn't have the importance that it had at the Event Tech Live. So that was my biggest takeaway. It was a pleasure meeting you, and it's great having you on the show already here. So
Likewise.
Our topic today, how to nail your 2023 event tech stack. I think it's a good moment to speak about this because, I mean, it's the end of the year. We're all already planning next year. We're planning our event strategy. We're planning our event tech tools. Some of us might have budget left if inflation and the craziness of the world hasn't eaten it all up yet. Um, for me personally, it's also very interesting because I've currently been running a few interviews in the background with people from the industry. And one of the very, very important questions is, what is your event tech stack? And I'm hearing so different combinations and so creative combinations out there. And one of these biggest takeaways for me is definitely the fact that people just have to be creative with their tech tools, because we'll go into the reasons in a sec. But there's so much innovation behind there and how these tools work together and so on. So I'm sure this is something we're going to touch on in our session today. I'll start with a question for you, Merijn. When is the right moment to reevaluate the event tech stack?
From my own perspective, I think anytime, as we quickly touched upon before we actually started this call, obviously I have the freedom of making my own decisions. If you are kind of responsible to make a use case and actually convince your board or your superior to go with the tool, it can be a lot harder to be as quick as possible. But one of the reasons why I say keep your eyes and ears open all year long is the fact that maybe you decided at the end of the year we're going to get our event tech reevaluated, and there we see the gaps, and then we add or maybe get rid of some of the event tech in our stack. Problem with that is if you in January or February come across a tool that could really change the rest of your year in terms of making your conversions more effective, or making you scale faster, or making your life more efficient, making you able to do 10 times more as you were able to do 2 months ago, um, then it can be a pain if you have to wait 10 months before you can finally get to the decision making process and say, hey, I want to add this event tech solution to my stack. That means that you pretty much missed out on 10 months, 10 times, doing 10 times as much or growing 10 times as fast. And in that regards, I would highly recommend everyone that's watching right now, keep your eyes and ears open. And there might be a tool that you haven't heard of before, and you see what it can do, and you see the possibilities for your company and the specific implementations you have in mind, and it will actually make the use case for itself. Build that use case and go to your board and convince them that they should highly consider, because they will be missing out on return on investment, missing out on growth, missing out on a more efficient team. And as you mentioned, like, we're in a very chaotic time where there's not always as much budget left. So if you can save, quote unquote, wasting 10 months of budget going down the drain for a tool that may not be as efficient as the one you just found, then that might be a very good use case to convince your superiors or yourself, if you are the decision maker yourself, to really take that step. And in that sense, be as iterative as possible. I understand you can't always keep your eyes and ears open, but if a colleague tells you about this amazing tool that gave them so much results, definitely give it some consideration, because you can always find a better solution. You can always keep growing. And the better tools you have in your tech stack, the more you're equipped to actually achieve your goals either faster or even overachieve your goals.
Absolutely. There's one point there that really sticks out to me, and this is, the event world and the event jobs. There's a lot of fluctuation. You change company there, and then you work with a specific tech stack, and then you change to another company as an event professional, and suddenly you're confronted with a totally new tech stack. And I think this is one of the things that is very present in our industry, is the fact that you just come somewhere, and then you are confronted with a tech stack that's existent, that has worked in the past for whatever reason, and you might come in there with new ideas, fresh innovation. And obviously budget is a topic, as you already said. It's not always a thing that goes super fast, especially with tools that might be in the higher priced league. Um, but what have you heard up to now from people that you've spoken with when it comes to like you start a new job somewhere and this is the tech stack that's given to you? Is there something that's just accepted, or will the people be demanding new tools, etc.? Have you got experiences with that from your talks?
I've heard quite a few different experiences, also experienced quite a few different environments myself before I actually started my own company, and it really depends on the company culture. I've heard quite some examples where actually from how they call it, like the bottom up, employees were like, "Hey, we really need to use this tool, and if you're not gonna buy it, I'm gonna buy it myself because it will change my life." And then if they get enough people behind it, the board kind of has to think, "Oh, I have to implement this new tool or change the actual tech stack that we currently have."
Mm.
But it's a tough one because most likely they've been using it for years after years. They are so used to it, which means that in essence it's more efficient because they know their way around the tool, and it will indeed take some time to learn a new tool and to get handy with it. But yeah, if that means that you're sticking with a tool that actually holds you back from your maximum potential as a company or as an individual, question is that going to make your company thrive in the long term? Maybe in the short term it's the easy solution, but they often say that if you stay in your comfort zone, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough. And I think it's mainly the bigger companies that have really a set structure that are not willing to change, and they're like, everyone should use our tools, and if you don't want to use our tools, there's the door. I'm not particularly fan of being part of a company like that. I think it's all up to us as an individual to show those companies like, okay, well, I choose the door because there are a lot of companies out there that are willing to listen to their employees and willing to think with them and also brainstorm in terms of how they can evolve their tech stack to the best capabilities, because they are here to grow, they are here to stay. Um, and those bigger companies are like, yeah, we have been here for so many years. No one is going to kick us off the throne. We don't have to change anything. That's not the environment for me. Maybe it's the environment for you. Everyone has their own, environments where they thrive and like to be in. Um, but yeah, it really depends on the company culture in that regards. And you see mainly in the smaller, the younger companies, that there's a lot more flexibility in that, and in the more mature companies that there's kind of a set set of rules and you have to kind of oblige to that, which I don't think is the best thing, but that's my opinion.
Well, I mean, usually these big companies, sometimes they're global, and decisions have then affect a lot of branches. This is what I've been hearing as well. Like, oh yeah, we'd love to change this and this, but the global department has made a contract with this and this company for 5 years, and now we have to use it. But so there's quite a bit of blockage there. Plus, as you mentioned totally correctly, this cost of change. I mean, that's something that's very true. The fact that when you change a tool that's been working for a while and you've really got used to it, you definitely lose efficiency at the beginning. And losing efficiency usually results in a loss of ROI at some point as well. And you have to catch up on that. So the decision to change a tool obviously has to be very thought through, and you have to calculate not only the cost for the tool, but also obviously the cost of adapting to the new scenario and teaching, possibly education, and so on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into an actual event tech stack. What would you, as the pro who you are, say that somebody who's actively in the event world as an event prof, let's maybe go into the classic idea of a planner who actively puts on events very regularly. What should be in a complete, impactful event tech stack?
Well, for me, it all starts with kind of a management tool or a planning tool, and that can be very broad interpreted. Like it can be as easy as a Google Sheet, although I think we all kind of got to the conclusion that it might not be the most efficient tool to use. Um, but there's a lot of options out there. Like we, for instance, use Asana for our kind of main task planning and having a good overview where everyone in the team can collaborate. But that is kind of the heart of your operations, because that's where everyone can see and stay up to date with what is actually going on in the company, what has to be done, when, who will do what, which is very important. But then you have a very broad variety of event technology or technology in general that you can add to that tech stack, which can help you improve your work or improve your task or executing your task. And that can really run the gamut. That really depends on your specific task as an individual, but also as a company. What are you focusing on? And then I think we're going to dive also a little bit into before, during, and after the event. If you look at that part, like there are different tools for different stages within your event journey that can really help you, like for instance, track the right data, but in the beginning and actually the whole journey, you also have to have the text tools that actually support your marketing team and make sure that you can see all the analytics, but also the conversion, make sure that you are on point with your targets, that you can track your goals, your KPIs. um, and those kind of tools really, I think they should be core to anyone's strategy and tech stack, because if you cannot have visibility in terms of what you're actually doing, what the output is and what the results are, how are you going to improve, how are you going to make sure you actually reach those goals, and it's also most of the time a motivator. Then you have a lot of, like, I would say, more basic tools, like if you need to schedule a lot of calls with your partners, for instance, or with the exhibitors or with the speakers. Most likely, you don't want to constantly be like, "Oh, what time works best for you? Oh, that time works best for me." Then you have the scheduling tools that you can use. So it really depends, kind of where your role is within the company. Look at the task you have, and if you have that in a nice central place, that really helps you to kind of map out all the tasks you have, and then figure out what are the technologies that can help me make this task a lot more efficient. Maybe how I've been doing it right now can be done in a more efficient way. And then kind of the really base foundation is, obviously we have to write some documents, we have to make a checklist. Like there are so many things we have to do as event professionals, and therefore, like, I'm a huge Google fan, because everyone can just collaborate and be in the same documents at the same time, and in general it can live everywhere. It's not for every company, that also kind of comes back to what is the tech stack that your company chose. We decided to go with a more online approach, and some are just completely hooked to Microsoft and Word, like those kind of tools. Most of the time that is not going to be your decision, because those tools are very similar, and they most likely have just a contract company wide that everyone can have his or her own um, private set of tools that can be used in order to, write everything down. But I would say, yeah, it really runs the gamut, and that I'm curious to hear also from the people in the audience who are listening to this, like, what are your most often practiced jobs? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Because I'm happy to think with you in terms of what event tech would be the best match for that and where you can find it. But most of the time, it's a matter of just being like, okay, this is my task. Type in Google, how can I do my task, X task, more efficient? And there are going to be tons of solutions out there. And depending on how flexible your company is, most likely there's a solution for you that fits within your budget that makes your life a lot easier. Pretty much every task you do can have a tech component to it. So your tech stack can be huge, like huge. I, for instance, do also podcasting. I need a lot of technology in order to make that recording possible, both hardware and software solutions. And then it's even broader. So sorry to overwhelm everyone listening. Like, there's a lot that can be added to your event tech stack, more specifically your tech stack in general.
I think you really put the finger in the wound there for the event profs. Totally right, because that's exactly what I would have asked the next is what challenges we have when we choose. And what I'm hearing is it's on the one side, it's a huge advantage. We can solve every single one of our problems with a tool. But for me, what I'm hearing as well is the huge challenge of actually taking the time, figuring out what first of all, what if we go all the way back, the goals, what you have, obviously, and then figuring out what tasks are connected to these goals. And the next step is then going into research mode. And I mean, research mode, we know it all. If we just lose ourselves in buying something in our private life on Amazon, we can spend hours comparing super similar products, reading reviews, putting our heads really straight down there, and suddenly a whole evening's gone and you still haven't bought your product. Possibly you've bought three other ones, but you haven't actually bought the product you're looking for. So I think this whole research aspect is something that is a challenge, and I think this is one of the challenges that you are trying to solve with Event Mender, obviously. So thanks for that. Me as an event prof, big thank you, and I'm sure everyone here in the audience agrees. By the way, if you want to add questions, the audience, to either myself or Merijn, then please do it via the Q&A section on the side, or the chat will be regularly checking. We actually have a question that already was asked before the event, and I'll just pass this one on to you right now because you already mentioned the pre-event registration. So this question is from Kyle. And Kyle is asking, should planners pick an event technology that can accommodate both their pre-event registration, email marketing, on-site badging, and mobile app? Or is it better to practice to use separate systems if the individual tools have more developed features than the all-in-one provider? So, exactly the topic we're speaking about.
Exactly. And I really love that question. So, Kyle, if you're watching, I assume you are actually, then thank you very much for asking that question. I think it's a very important one. And it kind of comes down also to where we started. Like, what is your company culture like? Maybe they already decided to go for an all-in-one tool, then your decision is pretty easy. That's going to be it. But if you're really up for the decision, so let's say you're starting your company or you're completely reevaluating what you have been doing in the past, then I think this was actually also mentioned in a session at Event Tech Live, if I'm not mistaken. It was Miguel Nieves who was mentioning this as well. It's really deciding between the quality and quote unquote efficiency. And that means if you're going with a tool that has all in one, everything in one place, most likely everything is working because otherwise the company wouldn't exist. I can tell you that much. But it doesn't mean that they're a specialist in every single aspect of the coverage of that particular tool. And if you want to go, on the other hand, for the higher quality, the software providers or the providers in general that really specialize in one specific aspect of that whole tech stack that you have to cover, most likely their execution is going to be the best because they are the expert in their field. They know exactly what they're doing, but doesn't mean you're done with one single solution. Then you have to find, first of all, you have to do more research. You have to cover a lot more different tools and do different research in different segments, but then also find a way how you can connect those. And I'm not sure if any of the people listening are aware of Zapier. It's a great tool to connect kind of different tools that you're using. I use that mainly for kind of running the business. We are starting to implement that on a bit larger scale, where you can kind of do automations. If something happens in this tool, then it should add it to that tool, or schedule this, or add an event here. And those kind of solutions are out there, but not particularly for every event tech solution out there. And that means that most likely you have to either do a part of the quote unquote integration yourself, which is manually extracting a CSV file and uploading it to another tool, or in general, just they won't work or interact with each other. And that's something where you really have to ask yourself the question: am I someone who needs a tool that has everything integrated? I don't want to think about, if I get a registration here, that I then have to download it and upload it to the other tool. Maybe I don't have the best quality, but at least the process itself is going to be a lot more efficient. For instance, that's what we are doing with our CRM. We are using HubSpot, which is kind of a tool that has a lot of different features that where you can also get a more specialized version of all those particular segmented pieces. But then we were stuck with the fact that, okay, now I have a type form here that's being filled in. I have that information, but then I have to kind of get it out of the type form and then put it in another sheet so I can actually make sure it's all centralized, and other people can access it as well. Whilst, yeah, for us, as for a CRM tool, for instance, I'm a big fan of having everything integrated. And the moment someone schedules a meeting with me, they are directly added as a new lead or a new person in the CRM system. That is the same for your event tech. Like, if you like the convenience of having everything kind of in one, it saves you a lot of research and it makes most of your life more easy, more efficient. Then that's the way to go. If you really want to get the best quality out there and you really want to stand on top of all your competitors and have everyone blown away, maybe it takes some extra additional steps in terms of doing some additional research and finding ways or workarounds to actually do the integration. It will guarantee you that you have the best solution out there, and that people that are using those specific solutions or are interacting with them, they will have in general a better experience than the less specialized version. It really comes down to, do you want the quality or do you want the efficiency? And that's mainly up to the company that makes that decision. What is our brand going to be like? Do we want to be the highest achiever out there? And do we really want to make sure that everyone who comes here is completely blown away? Or do we have the possibility to go with, quote unquote, a little bit less, something that still works but is not the best out there, not the most equipped with all the features in the world, but that makes our life a little bit easier? Then that's the way to go for you.
Yeah, I fully agree on that. I remember us speaking about this topic as well already at Event Tech Live. You've got these big players in the industry, and I read the word all-in-one solution very often. And obviously, an all-in-one solution, depending on what your needs are, can be exactly what you're looking for. You don't have to play around with integrations. You don't have to make sure that the data is pushed correctly from one tool to another. But I also fully agree that there are such cool tools out there that fulfill a specific niche. And this is the moment where you really have to start thinking, what's the pain I want to solve? And then based on that, you decide what kind of tool you're going to choose. And I mean, we said it before, the industry is huge. There's so much out there. So yeah, very, very interesting on that one. I would like to add one thing. You mentioned integrations. Now, integration is a topic that can be painful. We know that. Painful for various reasons. Tools integrate with each other generally. I mean, I'm a HubSpot user as well. Nothing makes me more happy is when I try another tool and I see they already have a HubSpot integration. So these pre-made integrations, they work fantastic usually, and it's a very, very easy process. But what I've realized, and I see we've realized it at Sweep as well up to some point, is that these out-of-the-box integrations aren't the only way to connect properly. And you mentioned Zapier. I love the individualism you have when you use Zapier. And in my honest opinion, every event team that's big enough should have one Zapier Pro in their team who can just make sure that these tools work seamlessly and perfectly together. So this is also something we're been experimenting with Sweep, just to make sure that we really have a perfect Zapier integration for our users. So also really love that take. We have a few more questions out of the audience, and I see one that's very broad, but I'll just shoot it there. How many tools does a typical event-related tech stack include, and how does it look like? Now, we mentioned how does it look like a little bit at the beginning. I'll just start by saying that also again at Event Tech Live, yes, we've mentioned that a few times. No, we're not commissioned by them. Maybe you saw it as well. There was this tech provider who had balls in front of, you know what I mean, right? Like these plastic balls. And you were able to, there were 4 little buckets basically, and you had to position the ball into the bucket that referenced to the amount of tools you're actually using. And it was 1 to 2 tools, 3 to 4, and I think then 5 to 7, and then it was 8 plus. And the 8 plus was by far the fullest bowl, which I found fascinating because it speaks against this. We need the little, like the smallest amount of tools to survive. Against that idea, and really plays into the idea of, we can use loads of tools as long as they integrate properly with each other and as long as they communicate with each other. So yeah, that's my take. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, same here. Just to give them a small shout out, I think it was Totem that actually did that, which I think is indeed a very interesting way to kind of visualize how event professionals look at their tech stack, because I think not everyone realizes how much tech you're actually using. Like every small thing can be kind of regarded as technology, sorry, that you're using for your event. Um, can be as simple as just using a social media app to communicate, which in essence is technology. Like if you're looking at it from that angle, probably you're going to end up with 30 or more tools on your list. If you look at a bit more like functional tools, so to speak, yeah, I would say 10 to 15 easily. And that even, like, for instance, I mentioned, right, we have a CRM that kind of has a quote unquote all in one, but then still I'm using additional tools, as you also mentioned, that then hopefully integrate with that tool, but it's still a different tool than the main tool you're using, that you kind of use as an add-on because they have one specific feature, one specific use case that maybe HubSpot itself doesn't really fulfill as good as they can, or they literally don't have it in their quote unquote tech assortment. And then if you add all those tools up, yeah, I think at least 10 to 15, at least.
Yeah, I fell literally for that one as well. I put my ball into the 3 to 4 one, and then they asked me the tricky questions. Well, don't you do this and this? And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. And it slowly moved on, and I ended up in the 8 plus as well. So it goes so fast, and I think stuff we don't consider as event tech per se because it's a multi-use tool. As you mentioned, social media, definitely one of these topics. We distribute through social media, so all our tools that we use to distribute our event through social media also count as the event tech tool. And this is something you really have to understand when building this perfect event tech stack. And I think trying to figure out what your existing tools already can do helps so much in reducing the number of tools if you want to reduce the number of tools. And so that's like a huge game changer when you really just realize what actually also counts as event tech. Also, when it comes to budgeting, especially when it comes to budgeting, because maybe you'll move the budget for that tool into a different department where there's a little bit more budget, but you also use it to improve your events. And when you manage to do that, then you've won. Um,
Absolutely.
so another thing we spoke about, and this is something that's very interesting for me personally, because I come from the two worlds. I consider myself as a planner, definitely, but I also definitely consider myself as a marketer. Um, where's the difference between the tools that planners use and the tools that marketers use, and why are they different?
Well, there are a few specific tools that really are only for marketing or only for events, but obviously there's a lot of overlap because as you as a marketer probably know, if you're also marketing for events, an event is kind of a customer journey. You can call it an event journey, and in that regards has a lot of touch points with marketing, and also marketing plays a huge role in actually making sure that you kind of can transfer that story that you're telling through that event journey to your audience and get people involved and get people to commit to actually going to the event and having a good time and being activated. And a lot of practices you're using there are going to be marketing. And that means that there's a lot of overlap. So there are a lot of tools. Yes, you could use it only for marketing or quote unquote only for an event, but most likely it then still has a marketing angle to it for that event. So I think it mainly depends on what you are going to be using it for and how you kind of translate that to yourself, like, okay, this is really for the event, this is really for the marketing. But if you look at it, there's a lot of overlap right there. And I think that's a good thing. Like, marketing is a very powerful way of getting people to actually go into that journey, be part of the journey, feel connected, feel seen. And if you can find the right tools to reach the right people, then it's a win-win both for the marketing department as for the quote-unquote event department. And it's funny that it is also a line that gets more blurred as we go. Speak with quite some event professionals, and it's a topic that comes more and more forward, where they say like, yeah, there's really a blurred line between quote unquote marketing and events. And event marketing is already kind of a thing, but more and more it blends because more and more people realize, like, yeah, it is a customer journey, and we are here to really make sure that people are going through all the phases of awareness, all the way to an advocate on the end, where they actually refer your event to someone else. And yeah, I would say they are separate, but there are so many similarities that you can draw between marketing and events. And I think that's also why the tools can be multi-purpose. There's only like a very select few that only specifically do one part. 99% can be used for both.
Yeah, I fully agree on that. I mean, this is a topic that comes up in nearly all of our sessions here because usually our audience is a very healthy mix from planners and marketers, and I fully agree they're very close. Where I see a very distinct difference, though, is the topic of data. So what I see is that although more and more event planners are now relying on data, uh, data's always been the super tool for marketers to prove success, but also to really improve the development of event strategies, for example, and event programs. And as everyone who works with data out there knows, this is also like one of the bigger issues when combining different tools with each other. Hashtag data silos. We hear that word more and more, and I mean, it's a fact, you know, data not transferring properly between the tools, not showing properly, or maybe being interpreted differently in the tools. Um, have you seen a development in that direction that will maybe improve this transferring of data or getting rid of data silos throughout the industry? Is there anything you can share?
Like, I've been quote unquote also involved in the blockchain industry, and one of the kind of premises they have is also to make the transfer of data a lot easier between tools, because then you can still kind of make sure that you know where it came from, who is the owner, and exchange it without quote unquote without risk. Obviously, there's always some risk to it, but at least you can track everything that's in there. And although that was like a talk we had, I think 6 years ago already, it is something that's going on in the background. So it's definitely not, how would you say, like, for the masses. It's not publicly available, but there are companies working on technologies to make kind of that data transfer or the public use of data a lot easier. But yeah, we're also living in Europe where GDPR and data privacy, it's a big thing. So you really have to make sure that on one hand be as open as possible, on the other hand be as secure as possible, and then the third angle is making sure that everyone still keeps their privacy. And that's pretty hard if you make it all open. So I understand why it is the way it is, but I know there are quite some people working on it. I just haven't found or seen a tool that really makes data sharing between all the different tools a very easy one. If someone in the audience has seen a tool like that, please let me know, because I would love to hear. And I think, Oliver, you would like to love to hear that too.
Absolutely. I mean, I already mentioned we are making great experiences with Zapier. And there is a European GDPR friendlier version, which I can't remember right now. In case anyone from my team is listening and you know what I mean, feel free to post it into the chat. Um, I will add another question. Actually, Kyle. So we have the confirmation Kyle is listening and watching. Thank you, Kyle, for
Awesome.
your active questions here. Um, There's another one that I'd like to target in your direction. When re-evaluating, what metrics are you reviewing to determine if the tools did the job you were hoping for? For example, do you create some sort of scorecard as the event takes place throughout the year? Fantastic question. Thank you, Kyle. And I'm really, really excited to hear the answer on this one.
Absolutely. No, I love your questions, Kyle. You should definitely like be a full-time question writer. I think it's a great one, and I think also very important because evaluation of your tools is kind of key, because if you don't really have a process in place to evaluate how your tools have been progressing over the years or over the events, then how are you ever going to make a better decision or decide we have to find a better way to do it? Um, I think it's also a tough question to answer, because for me, um, I am a big kind of user, how do you say, like ease of use person. So if it's easy to use for me and it makes my life easier, most likely it's a tool I'm going to keep until I find a tool that's better. So in that sense, for those kind of experience, it's very hard to make a scorecard. But in terms of um, tools that really have a measurement behind them, so for instance, they work to improve your return on investment, then it's relatively easy to say, did they actually fulfill that promise? Yes or no? Was that our fault because we didn't use the tool to its fullest capacity? Which is always kind of that balance between, are you really using the tool to its maximum capacity, or did you just not dive in deep enough that you could get everything out of there that, if you would have taken that extra step, you probably would have gotten the results you want. um, but that you have to be a harsh critic on yourself every now and then, which is relatively tough. But those kind of tools you can really compare to kind of the goals why you actually purchased that particular tool. Was it going to allow you to get a higher amount of leads, or more people or more visitors? um, if it's that kind of tool, then you can really easily say, okay, yes, compared to the previous event, we added 50% of additional people, and they all, you can also always, as you also had in the call with Chloe, you can add a lot of ways to measure that in between, where, for instance, you do a survey with them and be like, hey, I bought this new registration tool. Was your registration process more efficient than it was last time? And if you have a goal of, making 50% of your attendees, your previous attendees, more happy about the tool because everyone was complaining about it, um, then there's a very efficient way how you can measure with your actual end users, because some tools you are not the end user yourself. You kind of implement the tool so that other people can use it or become part of your event in this case. um, then that's also a way how you can evaluate, just simply by talking to the people who it's meant for. And either it's your team, where you can also do an evaluation on the team. Is everyone happy with working on this tool? Before we ended up at Asana, um, we've gone through Airtable and about three other tools, Monday.com, two, three other tools, and then kind of, I always believe, or I was taught by one of my mentors, who is saying, like, if you don't try something for 100 days, you sure it will not work, because it always takes some time to implement it. So never evaluate too quickly. Give it at least 100 days, so more or less 3 months, a quarter, where you can really get hang of it, try it, uh, probably have some fights with the tool here and there because you're trying to figure out how it works, talk with the customer service. And if after 100 days you're still not satisfied, then you should be like, okay, this is not something that was worth our time. It looked very nice in the research we did. It seemed to be the tool that was going to help us make billions. But unfortunately, in reality, it's not the tool for our team, not the tool for our people. And in that regards, always, as I mentioned, like, get in touch with the actual people using that tool. Maybe you're the manager and you decided to go for a tool, and everyone who's working with that tool behind your back, they're like swearing because they hate the tool so much. um, that's not going to be very good for your work ethic, and in that sense, like your company culture. So always make sure to evaluate whether it's actual attendees that you're trying to get to register, or it's your actual staff working with a specific tool. And also look at yourself, like be honest with yourself. Did I actually put in the right effort? And if that's not the case, maybe it's just because the tool isn't inviting enough to get you to use it to the fullest potential. Some tools are just super overwhelming, and it's not for everyone. So in that regards, at least 100 days, then evaluate with yourself, with your team, with the people using the tool. Did it got did it give that, or live up to the promise? And maybe that's a hard number. Maybe that's the ease of doing work, or having a more efficient workday, or getting more jobs done. Although that one you can obviously measure as well. um, yeah, give it 100 days, then evaluate and talk with the people. That would be kind of my quote unquote scorecard.
I absolutely love that. Fantastic. And other option would be get another tool to evaluate your tools. Fantastic. So we're approaching the end of our session, and we promised our viewers and listeners 5 strategies. Now, a little spoiler here. We actually already touched down on all of them. So this is just a little summary for you guys. 5 things that were said throughout the session and that you can screenshot or write down in your book or just remember. But these are our 5 rules of event tech. So I'll just dive into that if that's cool for you. Number 1, the classic. We all know it. Same counts for events itself, but definitely also with the tools. Set clear goals before making your decisions. So as you already mentioned right at the beginning, it's super important to understand what you want to achieve with the actual tool, and then basically choose the tool to reach those goals. Number 2, make sure your software is integratable with the rest of your tech stack. So we spoke about that as well. Data being pushed around, make sure that it arrives in the right place at the right time. If there is no integration, secret weapon, Zapier, and build your own integration. Number 3, don't trust an event tech partner that doesn't listen to your feedback. Now, actually, this is something we didn't touch down on yet. I can just speak out of personal experience here. When I started out at Sweep, one thing that really amazed me was that the developers really listened to the feedback of the customers and put it into practice very fast. I didn't know this was something that happened as quickly. And I'm seeing this with more and more tool partners. But there are also others that just really do their thing. They have their product roadmap and don't listen to their customer feedback as much. Is there anything you want to add on that point? All right.
Yes, I've actually experienced that firsthand, where some of the tools I've been using, they also kind of evolved in that process. So when they were in the early stage, you had pretty much like the moment you came up with an idea or an input, then a month later they had implemented it, and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And then they grew to a point where most of them, like, either they go public, or they have some very big VC firm on board, that then kind of decides like, hey, great that you're doing that, and great that that has improved your product, but we now want return on investment, and it probably costs you some time to listen to all those customers. We want you to decide what it's going to be, and maybe talk with 1 or 2 customers, but definitely don't listen to all of them, because you have maybe a million clients giving input. And there's something to say for that, because at a certain point you get so much input that you cannot really fulfill everyone's wishes. um, but it is good to be heard. So at least tell me why you are not going to implement it right away, or why it is something that maybe is further along the roadmap because you have more important features to develop. I understand that. I, it's not my company. I'm not there to make the decisions. I'm just making a suggestion, but at least make you feel heard as someone who provides input, because it's valuable. Like, we grow very much on a co-creation basis. Obviously, we're still in that early stage, so you're all very lucky. Like, if you have some input or feedback for us, I'm happy to jump on a call, walk you through the problems you're having, or maybe you can just send me a message on LinkedIn and be like, hey, why don't you have this feature yet? I'm missing this. That's something that helps us to evolve the tool beyond our own knowledge and really make something that drives an impact, and not just make something that is a great idea in my head, but actually co-create it. And that's, I think, how most companies start. But at a certain point, you come to a level where, yeah, if you get a million different requests, definitely try to find a way to evaluate them. I'm sure there's a technology solution out there to evaluate all the submissions that are out there. Actually, we have kind of one that we use. It's called Frill.io. Um, there, people can pretty much submit any suggestions and then also vote on them. So that also saves you from having to hear the same feedback over and over and over again, because people see, oh, someone already submitted that. Um, but yeah, at a certain point, you come to a point where it's going to be hard to listen to everyone. So I understand that. Doesn't mean I will not work with you. But the moment that you actually let me know, hey, I heard you, great idea, but not right now, that would give me the real confidence in that, hey, it's a company that's actually listening. It's not just a machine that's automated and doesn't give anything about the people actually using it, because you do want to feel kind of valued as a user. At least I know I do. But yeah, um, it has a huge added benefit, but I understand that it's not possible for every company, especially not at a super large scale. But yeah, it's important to listen. Doesn't have to be implemented right away, but at least just listen to us.
I think community plays a super huge role here, and like just the strength of a community and the way that you make sure that people in the community feel that they can give feedback and that it's heard, as you said. Um, that's definitely a big one there. Okay, point number 4. Use your existing software to the fullest before deciding to change. This is Merijn's 100-day rule. Please write that down, guys. 100 days testing and then a feedback round and see how it went. And then last not least, you see there is a but fail fast. Don't lose time on software that does not make you more efficient. So if you set whatever it is, 100 days, 50 days, 200 days, whatever your rule of thumb is, just make sure that you react at the moment when you realize that this tool is just not bringing you forward anymore, and go into the moment where you decide to go back to research mode and find out what can help you more.
If at day 60 there's no improvement at all, probably that is a very good kind of light that goes off in your head. That's like, okay, the other 30 days won't make, like, it's not that after 100 days it's only start working, but after 100 days you can really evaluate, has it been as successful as I thought it was? But definitely in the early stage you can already see if there's been zero improvement at all, only pains, it's only making it worse. Then probably within 30 days you can already be like, okay, this definitely wasn't it. Yeah, good. But
Absolutely. Great. So we've reached the end of that part. I'm have the feeling I learned a lot. I hope the same counts for the audience. Before we close this, very briefly, I have one more question from Sandy in the Q&A. Thank you, Sandy, for submitting. I'll just read it out loud again. Our event repeats every Saturday as we are an evening event disco. Therefore, we have a guest list every Saturday. Is it possible to permanently add certain guests to a fixed inventory list so that we don't have to do it again and again? I would say there are a lot of tools that help you solve that problem. What would you say? Is that your opinion?
I think I lost you for a second.
Yeah, you were gone for a second. My answer was there is a lot of tool. I tried to avoid to do a sneaky promo here, but definitely Sweep is one of the tools that would help you here. Um, do you have anything in mind that you would like to add for Sandy?
I think it's clear that the end of the episode is near. My internet is like, hey, Brian, it's time. Sorry for that,
Okay,
everyone.
don't worry. Sandy, we will get back to you with a personal answer, written. We have your contact details and we'll let you know what tool can solve that. So, in that case, as the internet god is sending us signs, thank you. This has been an absolutely interesting session. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience has as well. Where can we find you?
Um, Best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. I'm a huge LinkedIn fan, also relatively active there. So definitely feel free to connect. Send me a direct message. That's the place for me where I hang out. You can follow me and watch some of my posts. I post about 3 times a week just to share some knowledge or some interesting things that happen. Definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn and absolutely check out the tool as well. Everyone, I think you should have the access to a special gift because as we quickly joked before the show started, Christmas comes early this year. We have for everyone. I'm giving you the possibility to get on a one-on-one call with me to discuss whatever event platform would be the best match for you, kind of do a consultation there, walk you through your event goals, what you're trying to achieve, whether you want to go with a specialized or an all-in-one solution, for instance. And happy to make sure that you find the right platform. So we take all the research out of it for you. All you have to do is jump on a quick 30-minute call with me. And on top of that, we're actually going to pay you for getting a better quality platform, a better match for your event tech stack or your events in general. Because we're giving you 5% cashback on any deal that you're going to do with us. So just make sure to scan the QR code or go to eventmender.co. That is without an M. Slash, how did I call it again?
Don't worry. Actually, if you go on the left in our virtual event platform, you find it in your goodie bag, and everything is
Perfect.
already linked there. So you just click on the link, and you will be sent to the right page and can have this consume this fantastic offer. You can also find the virtual engagement technology checklist from Sweep just right next to the offer of Event Mender. So it's a little checklist that we created for you guys to make sure that your engagement tools are actually really that what you're looking for. Perfect. Then thank you one more time. I think this is the end of the show. We've nearly got our complete hour. I hope to see you again soon, and I wish you a lovely rest of your evening and a fantastic week, Merijn.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. It was a pleasure being here and looking forward to a possible next one.
Fantastic. Then take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
So, guys, this was it. We're on the hour. That's fantastic. Thanks for joining us. I hope all your questions were answered. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find Merijn on LinkedIn. You can find Sweep on LinkedIn. Last thing, a reminder, you click on the banner if you're not in our Slack community yet and join the Slack community and be the first to find out about these kind of events. So it's getting dark outside. I think you can see this in my picture. That's why time to go. It's been a pleasure. Have a good one and see you next time. Bye-bye.